ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Om Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with our discussion of the Vedanta by G.S. Gate. And we've come to chapter 2, which is the analysis of the actual Vedanta Sutra. Up until now, we've just had an introduction. So we're starting with Adhyaya 1, Pada 1. So there are 4 Adhyayas, four chapters and 4 Padas, 4 sections in each Adhyaya. So that means a total of 16 Padas. The first sutra, then therefore the inquiry into Brahman, Tato Brahma Jigyasa, sets forth in general the object of the treatise. The word then, or ata, according to Ramanuja Nimbarka, means after knowledge of karma and its fruits. But according to Shankara, it means after the acquisition of 4 requisites, which are discrimination between eternal and non-eternal things, aversion to enjoyment of the objects of the senses, here and in the next world, possession of self-restraint, tranquility, etc., and the desire to be absolutely free. So when Ramanuja and Nimbarka, when they say, after knowledge of karma and the fruits, it's understood that Purva Mimamsa, or the previous discussion, right, Jaimini's Purva Mimamsa sutras, which start at Tato Karma Jigyasa. Now let's inquire into karma and into doing different Vedic karmas, right? It talks about karma kanda, or ritualism, Vedic ritualism, has been finished, and now after that we talk about the Uttaramamsa, the subsequent discussion on dharma, Tato dharma jigyasa, right? Oh, Brahma, sorry, Brahma meaning Brahman, Tato Brahma jigyasa. So then Shankara disagrees, right? So Balaba prefers to take the word in the sense of adhikara. Adhikara means the beginning of a new topic. So he's taking the word ata to mean adhikara, the beginning of a new topic. So when we start a new topic, we usually say ata, then next, or next, let's talk about this, right? So this. And remarks that the inquiry into Brahman is possible even without any of the requisites mentioned by others. So Balaba is saying that even if we don't fully discuss dharma or karma, we can start in this inquiry into what is Brahman, what is the supreme. Madhva is not specific regarding the meaning of the word, that is the word ata, Tato Brahma Jigyasa. All agree in the explanation that the word ata, therefore, meaning therefore, for the reason that karma and its fruits are known to be perishable and limited, and that it is the knowledge of Brahman, or the supreme, right, alone, which can lead to eternal bliss. So he's gone through what the first word means according to Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, and Balaba. The second sutra defines this. So we have the first sutra is the Tato Brahma Jigyasa. The second sutra is Janmadyasya Yataha. That the supreme is that with which everything emanates. So the second sutra defines this Brahman by saying that it is that from which springs the origination, etc., of this world. And usually people quote the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yatova imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayantya bishanti, that from which everything emanates, by which everything is maintained, and into which everything enters, that is Brahman. So this definition of Brahman is very important because at the very threshold of the work, it gives a knock to the doctrine of Shankara, according to whom Brahman proper is merely existence, intelligence, and bliss, Sat Chit Ananda. While it is the lower Brahman, which associated with Maya produces, sustains, and destroys the world, which has nothing, has nothing but a phenomenal existence. So what he's saying is basically this second sutra um, literally speaks against the doctrine of Shankara, because Shankara's doctrine is that there's two levels, or sometimes they say three levels. There's the Vyavaharika level, and there's the Paramartika level. There's the lower level in which the world and the souls and God appear to be real. And then there's a higher level where only Nirguna Brahman, or Brahman without any qualities, exists. So while in the lower Brahman, which is associated by Maya, associated with Maya, produces, sustains, and destroys the world, which has nothing but a phenomenal existence. Now, can we convince that one who held Shankara's doctrine would define Brahman in this manner at the very outset? So that he's asking that question. So, if Vedavyasa or Badarayana, who wrote the sutras, was actually intending to explain Advaita Vedanta, the ideas of Shankara, the doctrine of Shankara from the very outset, then why would that person say that? That's a good question. So no such difficulty presents itself, however, with the other commentators for whom the twofold character of Brahman does not exist. So the other commentators don't take that there are these two levels of Brahman, the Vyavaharika and the Paramartika. The lower Brahman, the Saguna Brahman, which has qualities, and the Nirguna Brahman, and the Saguna Brahman, which with qualities that actually doesn't exist, but only maybe temporarily exists due to ignorance, and the Paramartika, or the Supreme Brahman, which has no qualities. So he's going through very quickly here. So he's talking about this is the second sutra. The third sutra, which is Shastriya Nitvat, which says that this Brahman is to be known only by means of the Shastra or scriptures. The third sutra says that scripture alone is the means of knowledge of knowing Brahman, a fundamental point common to all systems of Vedanta. And the fourth sutra, so he just says that everybody accepts that. The fourth sutra states that all the scriptures have for their ultimate purport Brahman, a point which the sutras in general attempt to make out. Vallabha reads sutras 2 and 3 as one and interprets sutra 4 to mean that Brahman is not only the efficient cause of the world, as is stated in Sutra 2, but also the material cause, because it permeates all in the form of existence, knowledge, and bliss, rejecting the interpretation given by others as being superfluous, since the samanvaya, as interpreted by them, is the object of the following sutras. A small change, however, may be a small charge may be brought against Vallabha himself, for Sutra 1423 also makes out the same point, that is, that Brahman is also the material cause of the universe. So what he's saying here is that this word samanvaya, which means regular succession in order, connected sequence, consequence, conjunction, mutual or intermediate connection in consequence. So samanvaya, the consequence. Okay, so this point about Brahman being the material cause of the universe, which is accepted by, so there's two causes, there's the nimitta karana and the upadana karana. So the nimitta karana means that Brahman is the cause of the universe, like a potter is the cause of making a pot out of clay. But the upadana karana means that he's also the clay, that the potter is also the pot is also clay, and Brahman is also the clay, not just the potter. So everyone except for Madhva accepts that, right? So the fifth here he's saying that Balaba says right from the beginning, from sutras, Sutra 4, Balaba says that Sutra 4 proves that Brahman is the material cause of the universe as well as the efficient cause. But this is brought out in Sutra in the fourth pada of the first chapter, Sutra 23. So the fifth Adhikarana, so we're talking here about it now. We've had 4 sutras. So we've had Atata Brahma Jigyasa, Janmadhyasya Yataha, Shastra Yonetvat, and the fourth sutra. And all of these sutras up until now have been a separate topic of discussion, right? So each one of them is a separate adhikarana. So now the fifth adhikarana, the fifth separate topic, takes up sutras 5 to 11. Asserts that the non-intelligent pradhana of the Sankhya's cannot be the cause of the world because it is not supported by the spirit. Sorry, it's not supported by the Shruti, since seeing or willing, which is an attribute of something intelligent, is predicated of the cause of the world. Okay, so this is the purport of this adhikarana, of this topic. According to Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka, who all refer to the same passage, Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.1. All the same, we are conscious that each has his own doctrine in view in a cut and dry form, and then proceeds to interpret the sutras in its light. At the end of the adhikarana, or the topic, for instance, Ramanuja remarks that this will also be a refutation of the Nirguna Brahman, the Nirguna Brahman idea of Shankara, right? Since it asserts willing as its attribute, and willing is only another name for being possessed of the quality of intelligence. Madhva, on the other hand, interprets the adhikarana, or the topic, to mean that Brahman cannot be said to be inexpressible because it is described as being the object of knowledge, ikshaniya, as in the text, atmanevatmanam pashyet. So, Balaba also has a somewhat similar interpretation. Brahman cannot be vyavaharatita, or beyond all expression or proof, because it is described as seeing, which means that it made itself vyavahara. It cannot be beyond expression, which is vyavahara atita, right? So because it's said to be described as seeing, and therefore it's vyavahara. So after having stated so far in a general way that Brahman is the chief object of the Vedanta Shastra, that it is the cause of the origination, sustenance, and destruction of the universe, and that it is intelligent, the Sutrakara, right, the author of the sutras, proceeds with his task of examining certain passages of the Upanishads and demonstrating that certain words in them refer to nothing but Brahman. Here again, Shankara makes the introductory remarks to the effect that the question now before us is whether the higher or lower Brahman is referred to in certain passages of the Upanishads. But this seems to be without justification, because in the remaining part of the chapter, the Adhya, we are concerned with the choice between Jiva and Brahman, and even Shankara's own commentary accords with the same. Thus, this is only another instance of the commentator showing the influence of his preconceived prejudices. The next Adhikarana, or the next topic, Sutras 12 to 19, asserts that the Anandamaya referred to in Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5 is the highest self and not the jiva. This seems to be a natural and straightforward interpretation, and all except for Shankara follow it. Shankara, however, after having given this interpretations at length, finally rejects it in favor of another, to the effect that the word Brahman in the immediately following phrase, Brahman Pucham Patishta, refers to Brahman principally and not to a member of the Anandamaya. And the reason given for accepting this in second interpretation is that the Anandamaya would only refer to the Savishesha Brahman, or the Saguna Brahman, right? And never to the Nirvishesha or Nirguna Brahman, which is called Ananda itself, and never to the and not Anandamaya. That this passage containing this interpretation is not an interpolation, as Dushan seems to think, follows from the fact that it is only in this passage that Shankara refers to the distinction between Savishesha or Saguna and Nirvishesha or Nirguna Brahman, of which he makes a mention before commencing this Adhikarana. And secondly, because Vallabha refutes this interpretation, which must therefore have existed somewhere. One sutra, Kamacha Nanumanapeksha, Sutra 118, is interpreted variously. Shankara and Vallabha explain it to mean that the Anandamaya cannot be also the Pradhana. Pradhana means a conglomerate of material elements. Anumana, Anumana means inference, right? For willing is immediately predicated of the Anandamaya. Ramanuja and Nimbarka, however, explain thus: if the Anandamaya were to denote the jiva, if the word Anandamaya, right, then it would be in need of some non-intelligent material cause. Anumana achit. Anumana means inferential. Achit means matter. So just as a potter is in need of clay, but the Anandamaya has no need of any such thing, because he has only the will, or kamat. Kamat means from desire, which equals sankalpat. Sankalpat means from his vow or from his reasoning. And so this is another reason why the Anandamaya cannot be the jiva. Madhva explains we need not care for reasoning, anumana, for reasoning can be had at our free will. Now here the interpretation given by Ramanuja and Nimbarka seems to be more suitable, for it deals with the question between Brahman and Jiva, which has been raised in the preceding sutras, while Shankara's interpretation unnecessarily brings in the pradhana, the conglomeration of material elements. Although the question regarding it has been set at rest in the preceding Adhikarana. Besides, it would be only a repetition of Sutra 115. In this Adhikarana, Sutras 16, 17, and 19 deserve notice because they all rest on the conception of a difference between individuality between Brahman and Jiva. And Shankara, at the end of Sutra 17, comes forth with his usual explanation that such sutras as these only refer to the difference between Brahman and Jiva, which is due to Maya, whereas, really speaking, there exists no such difference. Yeah, so we have some comments here. Anandamaya kosha. Kosha is a covering, a layer or body of bliss of the Panchakosha. Madhva suggests the freedom to speculate as a legitimate way of concluding. I'm not exactly sure what the question is here or whether that's a question or a comment. As regards the remaining adhikaranas or topics of this pada, right, all agree in their interpretation except Madhva, who refers to different passages of the Upanishads in the last two adhikaranas or topics. Thus, Adhikarana 7, sutras 20 to 21, demonstrates that the golden person seen within the sun, for example, in Isopanishad, Hiranyayena Satyena Satyasya Pihitam Mukam, and the person seen within the eye, that is the jiva, mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 1.6, are not some individual soul of high eminence, but the supreme Brahman. Here also, the Sutra 21, Vedavya Padeshachanyaha, deserves notice as it refers to the distinction between Brahman and Jiva. Adhikarana 8, or topic 8, Sutra 22, states that the ether mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 1.9 is not the elemental ether, but is the highest Brahman. So all of these sutras now are talking about what is Brahman. In fact, the whole first adhyaya, the first chapter, is talking about what is Brahman. And so they're given different Upanishadic quotes, and in each case, the words in the Upanishad, the nouns in the Upanishad are explained as meaning Brahman and not meaning their ordinary meanings, ordinary dictionary meanings. So Adhikarana 9, Sutra 3, says that the prana mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 1.2.5 denotes the highest Brahman. Adhikarana 10, Sutras 24 to 27, teaches that the light spoken of in Chandogya Upanishad 3.13.7 is not the ordinary physical light, but also is the highest Brahman. Adhikarana 11, Sutras 28 to 31, asserts that the prana mentioned in Kosataki Upanishad 3.2 is Brahman. In this adhikarana, the ablative upasa tri vidyat, okay, from the knowledge of the three upasas, I'm not sure what that means, right, is explained in two ways by Shankara. The sutra may either mean, if it be said that Brahman is not meant on account of the characteristic marks of individual soul and the chief vital air being mentioned, we reply no, for your interpretation would lead to or would necessitate threefoldness of devout meditation. So that's why he's talking about upasa trividya, right? Threefoldness of devout meditation, which is inappropriate to assume, or the sutra may mean even the characteristic marks of the individual soul, as well as the chief vital air, are not out of place, even in the chapter whose topic is Brahman, on account of the threefoldness of devout meditation. That is, the chapter actually aims at enjoining three kinds of devout meditation, according as Brahman is viewed under the aspect of prana, under the aspect of prajna, or in its own nature, or according to Ramanuja, meditation on Brahman is it in its own nature as the cause of the entire world, on Brahman as having for its body the totality of enjoying souls, and of Brahman as having for its body the objects and means of enjoyment. So this is a reference to Ramanuja's Shariri Bhava. Ramanuja, Nimbarka, and Madhva follow the second way, of explaining the ablative here. The ablative means the art in this. What is it said here? Upasa tri vidyat is ablative singular. So when he talks about ablative, he's talking about that ending there. It means from or because. So because of here means because of, or while Balaba, so Nimbarka, Ramanuja, Nimbarka, and Madhva follow the second way of explaining the ablative, while Balaba follows the first way, and no doubt the second way is more natural, as shown by the ablatives elsewhere and by the ablative immediately following in this very sutra. So the second pada, so that's dealing with the first pada. The second pada of the first adhyaya deals with passages in which the indications of Brahman are not distinct. So Adhikarana 1, that is Sutras 1 to 8 of the second pada of the first adhyaya, shows according to all, except Madhva, that the being which consists of mind, manomaya, whose body is breath, prana, sharira, enjoined to be meditated upon in Chandogya Upanishad 3:14, 1 and 2, is not the individual soul, but is the Brahman, is the supreme Brahman. This adhikarana is very important for our purpose in that it contains many sutras speaking of the difference of nature, the difference of nature between Brahman and the jiva. For example, Sutras 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8, Shankara has to add his usual explanation after Sutra 6 that all this difference is to be understood as unreal and only due to the false limiting adjuncts of the highest self. Whereas other commentators do not feel the necessity of any such explanation. In Sutra 7, it is interesting to note that the word tad vyapadeshat, again, there's an ablative there ending, like literally owing to the mention of that, is explained by all as meaning alpatva. Alpatva means minuteness, smallness. Alpatva can also be called anutva. Anutva means smallness, right? Vyapadeshat, that is owing to the mention of minuteness. And as stated, one of the reasons in favor of the jiva being referred to in the passage in question, because it doesn't talk about vibhu, it doesn't talk about all pervasiveness, but it talks about minuteness, which is an aspect of the individual soul. So does it not imply an admission on the part of the sutrakara, of the person who wrote the sutras, of the minuteness of the jiva, accepted by all except for Shankara, according to whom alone the jiva is as omnipresent as the supreme Brahman. So, but of this later on. So also the explanations of the word vyomavacha, in the same sutra, literally meaning like the ether, are interesting. Shankara explains it to mean that Brahman, though all-pervading, is here described as minute, just as, for instance, the ether, which, though all-pervading, is looked upon as limited in size from the point of view of the jar, etc. Okay, so there's an example that we say that space is all-pervading. Space is all-pervading, but if we have a pot, there's some space, there's some air inside the pot. So that space, that atmosphere or that air within the pot, right, is a limited form of that all-pervading space. So this is the idea of Shankara, is that the pot is actually unreal, and therefore space is never limited, or the supreme Brahman is never actually limited. Whereas other commentators will say, no, the pot is real, even if it's temporary, and therefore there's a limit on the space in the pot. So Shankara explains it to mean that Brahman, though all-pervading, is here described as minute, just as, for instance, the ether or the space, though all-pervading, is looked upon as limited in size from the point of view of a jar, the space within the jar. Of course, it may be confessed that the illustration, in this sense, fits in very well with Shankara's doctrine, as it explains exactly the relation between Brahman and the Jiva as he believes it to be. It is very curious that Nimbarka follows Shankara in this mode of explanation, in this particular case. Though it must be supposed that he understands the illustration only in a limited sense, that is, to explain how a large thing may be at the same time described as small. But without any reference to the relation between Brahman and Jiva, Ramanuja very cleverly explains it thus. Not only is the Manomaya in this passage described as minute, but it is also described as being all-pervading like the ether in the very same passage. That is, Jayan, Pritivya, etc., Chandogya Upanishad 3:14.3, which is thus an additional argument why the Manomaya should denote Brahman. Madhva and Vallabha explained the word just like Shankara. So also the word Vaisheshat, literally owing to difference or because of difference in Sutra 8, which gives the reason why Brahman is not subject to pleasure and pain, just like the Jiva, as explained by all except for Ramanuja, who to mean owing to the difference of nature between Brahman and Jiva. But Ramanuja explains it as owing to the difference of the cause of enjoyment. That is, it is not the abiding in the body merely which leads to the experiencing of pleasure and pain, but the being subject to actions and to merit and demerit resulting from them, in other words, the karma got from certain actions, which is, however, never possible in the case of Brahman, a point very frequently alluded to him. So while all these other commentators are saying that when the supreme Brahman somehow is limited to a particular body or a minute body, like that in the case of a jiva, right, it will therefore naturally, because of its limitations, experience enjoyment and sadness and distress or whatever it is like that. But we can see that also the idea that the Supreme Lord in Vaishnavism, the Supreme Lord takes different bodies or takes different appearances, and his appearances are completely transcendental, and he doesn't have the experience of happiness and distress that we do, that comes along with the karma that we enjoy or which we accrue by our actions. So Ramanuja is just pointing that out. He's saying that it's not actually the taking of a body or a small form that creates this happiness and distress, but it's the fact that we get karmas, that our actions are subject to karmas of merit. We get merits and demerits from the actions that we perform, and God doesn't. So a point very frequently alluded by Ramanuja. Okay, so the second adhikarana, this is of the second pada of the second subject of the second pada of the second chapter, right, teaches that the being to whom Brahmans and Kshatriyas are but food, referred to in Kathopanishad 1:224 is the highest self. Adhikarana 3, the third subject, Sutras 11 to 12, established that the two entered into the cave, Kathopanishad 1:3:1, Brahman and Jiva, and the cave is an allusion to the heart, that the super soul and the soul are there within the heart. All except Ramanuja agree in having these two as adhikaranas. All except Ramanuja agree as having these two, that is Sutras 9, 10, 11, and 12, as two separate subjects or adhikaranas, right? Topics. But Ramanuja alone has them as one adhikarana. So he thinks that all four sutras, 9, 10, 11, and 12, are one topic. However, his attempt, to tackle them together is rather far-fetched and without any special purpose. See page 245, BSS, not sure, maybe Brahma Sutras, Sri Bhashya, 68. Sutras 11 and 12 deserve notice because Sutra 11 contains the dual Atmanau. So this ending "au" is a dual ending. So Atmanau would talk about two Atmans, right? Which is, I don't know how Shankara is going to explain two Atmans because he only believes in oneness, right? So, but in the sutra itself, they have this dual ending, Atmanau, speaking of Jiva and Paramatma. So how does Shankara explain that? And that's Sutra 11 of the second part of the second Adhikarana. And Sutra 12 lays stress on the difference of characteristics between Brahman and Jiva. Ramanuja remarks on this sutra, and he gives the remarks here. I'm not going to do it, but in English, it's stated in this section, the Jiva and Paramatma are spoken of everywhere as the mediator and the object of mediation, as the attainer and the object to be attained. Even Shankara says that is the Jiva is supposed to be the goer. Does he mean goer? Oh, while the Paramatma and the object to be gone to. Adhikarana 4, or the fourth section here of Sutras 13 to 17, asserts that the person within the eye mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 4.15.1 is Brahman. Ramanuja and Nimbarka read an additional sutra, which must be Sutra 18 according to others, I guess, between Sutras 15 and 16. Oh, excuse me. So the additional sutra, literally, for this reason, it is Brahman. So it's saying asserting that the person within the eye mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 4.15.1 is Brahman, and for this, literally for this reason, it is Brahman. Between Sutra 15 and 16. So Ramanuja and Nimbarka see actually some extra text there. But it cannot be original because it appears to be quite unnecessary and rather out of place in the midst of the ablatives expressing the reasons, right? So ablative against, the ablative case means for or because. Because, from or because. So not to mention that Balaba and Madhva also do not have it. Okay, so this is that's an interesting point. We might want to look and see if Ramanuja and Nimbarka always, if their commentaries are always printed with this extra text in it. Okay, but anyway, it's extra and it's redundant because they all say that the person within the eye mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 4.15.1 is the Supreme Brahman. So it doesn't need to be restated by this extra text. So it's an interesting observation that he's made here. Not to mention that Balaba and Madhva also do not have it, right? So Balaba and Madhva don't have that extra text. So I guess, and I'm guessing Shankara also doesn't have it. Adhikarana 5, or the fifth topic, Sutras 18 to 20, say that the ruler within, or the Antaryami, right, other name for the Paramatman, right, mentioned in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 3.7.3, is Brahman. It cannot be the pradhana, the conglomerate of material elements before they're all separated out in creation, of the Sankhya's, on account of this statement of the qualities not belonging to it in Sutra 19, nor can it be the jiva for both the recensions of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and there may be different versions of it, slightly different versions of it, speak of it as different from the internal ruler, 20. Here, Shankara, Nimbarka, Madhva, and Balaba read Sutras 19 and 20 as nachas, whatever it is. And while Ramanuja reads the words sharirascha as forming part of the sutra. Okay, so here basically we've got a difference between Shankara Nimbarka Madhva and Balaba, who will read these two sutras, one sutra ending in Bilapat, and the other what Ramanuja is saying, he includes in the first sutra the first word of the second sutra, which is of Sutra 20, which everybody accepts as Sutra 20, Sharirascha, which is this first part, as part of Sutra 19. All right. So while Ramanuja reads the words Sharirascha as forming part of Sutra 19, this way has the advantage of connecting both the ablatives with Sharira. So there's a couple of ablatives in here. We've got Nacha Smartamat Mat Adharma Bilapat Sarirascha Abayetpi. Actually, the Devanagari is not quite clear here. He Beda Nainam Adiyate means. So this way has the advantage of connecting both the ablatives with Sharira, which means body, right? Therefore, it seems preferable to have Sharira and Enam, meaning this, I guess, which refers to the Sharira only, in one and the same sutra. 20, Sutra 20 asserts the difference between Brahman and Jiva, and Shankara, as usual, comes forth with his explanation that all these statements of difference are due to the limiting adjuncts, which themselves are the products of nescience. Naturally, Shankara is going to say that. Okay, so so the difference is spoken of by all the other commentators except for Shankara, but in a slightly different format, because Ramanuja breaks the two sutras in a slightly different way. Adhikara 6, sutras 21 to 23 show that the being described as possessed of invisibility, etc., in Mundaka Upanishad 115 and 116 is Brahman, and it cannot be the pradhana, again the conglomerate of material elements, or jiva, because of the statement of distinctive attributes and difference. Here also, Sutra 22 speaks of the difference of nature between Brahman and Jiva. Adhikarana 7, Sutras 24 to 32, says that the Atma Vaishvanaraha, mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 5 to 6 is Brahman. Adhikarana 1, Sutras 1 to 7, he's going back to that, proves that the being within whom heaven and earth, etc., are woven, mentioned in Mundaka Upanishad 2 to 5, is Brahman on account of the term Atman being used of it, and on account of its being designated as that to which the released have to resort. It cannot be pradhana, nor the individual soul, owing to the declaration of difference. Ramanuja alone reads Sutras 3 and 4 as one, above 1, 2, 19, and 20. See above Adhikarana, so Adhyaya 1, Pada 2, Sutras 19 and 20, which he sees as one, but he sees Sutras 3 and 4. These are 3 and 4 of the first Adhikarana. Okay, so it cannot. So it is to be noted that Sutras 2, 5, and 7 especially refer to the nature of the difference of nature between Brahman and Jiva. Adhikarana 2, sutras 8 to 9. So it seems like he's going on to the third pada here. The third pada, because he's dealt with the second pada up above. So the third pada of the first adhyaya. So let's see. So, and on account of it being designated as that to which the released have to resort, the released soul, it cannot be pradhana nor the individual soul, owing to the declaration of difference. So Ramanuja alone reads sutras 3 and 4 as one. So just like he does with 1, 2, 19, and 20. It is to be noted that sutras 2, 5, and 7 specifically or specially refer to the difference of nature between Brahman and Jiva. So in the next topic, Adhikarana 2, sutras 8 and 9, show that the Bhuman, that which is great, in Chandogya Upanishad 7, 23, 24, is Brahman only, and it cannot be prana or the vital air on account of information about it being given subsequent to samprasada, that is the bliss or the state of deep sleep, or secondarily, the prana, which is awake in the state of deep sleep. Ramanuja, Nimbarka, and Vallabha follow this explanation of the words sangrasad adadyu pradeshat. Madhva, however, explains the words to mean on account of its being of the nature of unsurpassed bliss and on account of it being declared above all, which is not reasonable owing to the absence of cha, or the word and. So Madhva has sort of broken up this phrase here, but he hasn't. He's broken it up into two, which is not reasonable owing to the absence of cha. So there should be this word cha, which means and. Adhikarana 3, sutras 10 to 12, teaches that the akshara, the imperishable one, spoken of in Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 388, is Brahman. The Adhikarana 4, Sutra 13, states that the Paramapurushaha, the highest person, to be meditated upon by the syllable Om mentioned in the Prashna Upanishad 5.5, is the highest Brahman because of its being designated as the object of realization. Ikshati karma vyayadeshat, and not the lower Brahman. That's if we're going to understand higher and lower Brahman, which is really only Shankara's idea. This is according to Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka. However, this is according to Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka, however, translated thus: the object of meditation, ikshati karma, is Brahman, and not, so Brahman neuter and not Brahman masculine. Okay, so Brahman neuter, the word Brahman, when it's in neuter, refers to the Supreme Brahman. The word Brahman, when it's masculine, refers to Chaturmukha Brahma, the god, the Devata, with the four faces. Okay, so again, the object of meditation, which is mentioned here from Prashna Upanishad 5.5, right, is, according to Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka, right, the object of meditation, ikshati karma, is Brahman, the Supreme Brahman, right, and not the four-faced Brahman, right, because it is later designated Vyapya Deshat, right? So it says that in the sutra up here, Vyapya Deshat, right? From later designated from as Paramatman. Later on, it's called Paramatman. So obviously, the four-faced Brahman is not Paramatman. So therefore, these three commentators, Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka, are expressing that here. So thus, the alternatives according to Ramanuja and Nimbarka are Brahman and Brahmadeva, right? So they say Brahman and Brahmadeva, and this is natural because the twofold character of Brahman, higher and lower, is not known to them, right? So whereas Shankara is talking about two different types of Brahman. But everybody else understands this to be the supreme Brahman, right? When Brahman is in neuter gender, and when Brahman is in masculine gender, it's talking about the four-faced Brahman, four-faced Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma. And this is natural because of the twofold character Brahman, higher and low, is not known to them, not known to Nimbarka and Ramanuja, only to Shankara. Maybe to Ballabha also. Ballabha reads the sutra just like Shankara, but has the alternatives Paramatman and Brahma. Also, Parapurusha, Paramatma, Dhyana Vishaya, Ahosvid, Virat Purushaha, Brahmava. Brahma with a long A there means the four-faced Brahma. So he's quoting from Ballabha here, Ballabha saying the supreme Brahman, but also Brahma. He's making a distinction between the four-faced Brahma and the supreme Brahman. Madhva, reading the sutra like Shankara, explains thus. In the passage, Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.3, Tadaikshata, right? Vishnu is spoken of because the mention of the act of seeing, ikshati karma vyapadesh, cannot belong to any other. No doubt Shankara's way of translating the phrase is more natural than that of Ramanuja, for the sutra should rather have been in the form ikshati karma sa vyapadeshat, if it were to be understood just as Ramanuja does. Though Shankara's reference to the lower Brahman is without sufficient reason, as we shall see later on. In the next Adhikarana 5, Sutras 14 to 21, the question is whether the small ether, Daharaha Akashaha, within the lotus of the heart, mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 8.1, is 8.1.1 is elemental ether, the element ether, or whether it's the jiva, or whether it's the supreme Brahman. That is, that it is Brahman is decided owing to the many names or epithets, right, applied to it subsequently, such as being free from sins, etc., and owing to other indicatory marks, such as that all the individual souls are described as giving it into it, and that it is itself described as being a bridge or support which prevents these worlds from being confounded. But in subsequent passages, for example, Chandogya Upanishad 8.3.4, it is the jiva which is spoken of thus. Now, for example, quote, now that serene being, literally complete satisfaction, samprasadaha, which having arisen out from this earthly body and having reached the highest light appears in its true form, that is the self. Thus said he. So that obviously refers to the jiva. And so dahara may as well denote jiva. The objection is answered in sutras 18, 19, and 20. Especially Sutra 19 is very interesting in as much as the different ways of understanding it point back to the fundamental difference in doctrine. Sutra 19, Narayana. Sutra 19, literally translated, would run thus. If it be said that from a subsequent passage it appears that the individual soul is meant, it is, however, the one whose true nature has become manifest. If it is said that from a subsequent passage it appears that the individual soul is meant, it is, however, the one whose true nature has become manifest. Shankara interprets it to mean that what is referred to in that passage is the individual soul with its true nature no longer obscured by the illusory limiting adjuncts, Maya, right, illusion or ignorance, that is absolutely non-different from Brahman. Here again, Shankara adds his usual remark that In all those places where a difference between Brahman and Jiva is spoken of by the Sutrakara, the author, right? He does not mean that the difference is real. His only object is to remove the false notion which attributes the limited nature of Jiva to Brahman. And for this purpose, he only takes for granted the popular belief that the two are different. Thus, even Shankara, in the present case, shows his consciousness of the fact that the Sutrakara, the author, here refers to the difference between Jiva and Brahman. So Shankara admits it. All the other commentators, however, interpret the sutra to mean that no doubt it is the Jiva that is referred to, but with its true nature manifested, and hence the similarity of epithets or names. But even then, the Jiva cannot be Brahman, and so Dahara cannot mean Jiva. Nimbarka has said one thing here, and I'm not quite sure what that means. So Madhva also remarks that a difference must be made between the Jiva, which when released has its true nature manifested through the favor of Paramatman, and the Paramatman himself, who is indicated by the Dahara in the preceding passage. That this second explanation of the sutra is more natural is clearly stated by Vallabha. Here, the word "to," which means "but" in Sanskrit, so the first word in this sutra is "to," does not refute something, but only says that there is something else. Hence, "na" or "not" is not used in the sutra. So normally, the idea would be is if you have a sutra, if you have one sutra which might be a Purva-paksha understanding, an initial understanding, prima facie view, then and then the next sutra, if it's going to refute that, it would have "na" or "not that." But instead, this sutra has "to," and so what Vallabha is saying here is that the "to" means but it doesn't mean but in the sense of but the opposite, or but this is refuted, but it means it is not meant to refute something, but to add something else as well, to only that there is something else to said along with the previous sutra. The next two sutras, 22 to 23, form an independent adhikarana, so they're at their own topic, according to Shankara, whom Madhva follows also in the sense that he takes these two sutras to be one topic, deciding that he after whom everything shines, which is a quote from Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.10, is not some material luminous body, but Brahman itself, he after whom everything shines. So, but according to Ramanuja, Nimbarka, and Vallabha, they form part of the preceding adhikarana, the previous topic, giving only additional arguments for understanding Dahara, the word Dahara, to mean Paramatman. It is the imitating Jiva that in reference to that is referred to in this passage, with which Sutra 19 concerns, while the Dahara must be Brahman, the supreme Brahman, to be imitated. So the particle or the conjunct cha, which means and, in Sutra 22, no doubt favors Ramanuja's explanation as stating something additional to support what precedes. And Shankara, conscious of this difficulty, has to explain cha as referring to the fourth pada of the fourth line of the same sloka, which here is translated as, "By the light of him, everything is lighted," in addition to the first three padas of both Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.10 and Katha Upanishad 2.5.15, which is not very satisfactory. Yeah, so Shankara's got to try to explain this word cha or and he's doing it by saying it refers to the fourth line of the slokas in these two Upanishads, Mundaka and Katha. mentioned. So Ramanuja gives another reason also why these two sutras cannot be taken as a separate Adhikarana. So just remember, Madhva and Shankara take it, these two, which are they're 23 and 22 and 23, I think. Yeah, 22 and 23 as a separate topic, but Ramanuja says no. And Ramanuja gives other reasons why these two sutras cannot be taken as a separate topic or adhikarana. So some maintain that the last two sutras constitute a separate adhikarana, right? So this is, quoting from Sri Bhashya, Ramanuja is saying that when he says some maintain that these two sutras constitute a separate adhikarana, right? Then he's referring back to Shankara, because obviously Madhva was after Ramanuja. So, but maybe Ramanuja knew of other commentators that also followed that idea. So, some maintain that the last two sutras, 22 and 23, constitute a separate adhikarana meant to prove that the text Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.10 refers to the highest Brahman. This view is, however, inadmissible, according to Ramanuja, for the reason that with regard to the text in question, no purva paksha can arise. There was no prima facie view that this is there to contradict, in other words, right? So it having been proved under 1.2.21 and 1.3.1 that the whole section of which that text forms a part is concerned with Brahman, and it further having been shown under 1.1.24 that Brahman is appended under the form of light. The interpretation, moreover, does not fit in with the interpretation, moreover, does not fit in with the wording of the sutras. So this is all from Sri Bhashya. This is all what Ramanuja is refuting. He's saying that this idea doesn't fit in with the actual wording of the sutras. So Ramanuja rejects the idea of Shankara and Madhva that sutras 22 and 23 form a separate adhikarana. Adhikarana 7, or the seventh adhikarana. Now I don't know how he's numbering the adhikaranas there, because if different commentators are giving different numbers to adhikaranas because they're putting certain sutras in different adhikaranas, then I'm not sure exactly how he's quoting the adhikaranas. Maybe he's taking Ramanuja's counting method. I'm not sure. So Sutra Adhikarana 7, but let's just go with it. Sutras 24 and 25 decides that the being measured by the thumb, measured by the thumb in Kathopanishad 2.4.13 is not the individual soul, but is Brahman, the Supreme Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is described as having the measure of a thumb because it dwells for the purpose of devout meditation in the heart of the devotee. The heart is the measure of a thumb, and from such meditation, men alone are qualified, so that we are not concerned with the size of the heart of other animals. That's an interesting proposition. The next two adhikaranas, 26 to 33 and sutras 26 to 33 and sutras 34 to 38 form a sort of digression suggested by the preceding adhikarana, the preceding topic. The question is whether it is men alone who are qualified for Brahma Vidya, or knowledge of the Supreme Brahman. The eighth adhikarana decides that the gods also are qualified for Brahma Vidya. So he's making a distinction between human beings and devatas, like Shiva and Brahma, etc. The eighth adhikarana decides that gods are also qualified for Brahma Vidya. And the ninth adhikarana denies this qualification to Sudras. So this is very interesting. So saying that this idea that came up when speaking about Brahman as being the size of the thumb, which is the size in the human body, in the human heart, right, means that only human beings can strive to achieve knowledge of Brahman, or the Supreme Brahman, Brahma Vidya, right? But then he qualifies that by saying the gods can also do that, the devatas, right? They can also strive for Brahma Vidya. But then in the next Adhikarana topic, he's saying that Sudras are disqualified. Dasangulam, yeah, from Purusha Suktam, Dasangulam. So actually, the thumb is not really, the thumb is not really usually Dasangulam. I mean, I'm looking at my thumb. It looks like about 4 angulams. Angulam being the width of a finger. The next two adhikaras. Oh, okay, about sudras. We're talking about the qualification of sudras. So Adhikarana 10, Sutra 39 says that the prana, before whom everything trembles, in Katha Upanishad 262, is Brahman, is the supreme Brahman. Adhikarana 11, Sutra 40, says that the Jyoti, or the light mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad 8:12:3, is also the supreme Brahman. Thus, Sutras 24 to 40 form, according to Shankara, 5 separate adhikaranas, 5 separate topics. Ramanuja, however, regards all of these as forming one main topic, or adhikarana, referring to the Angusta Matra Purusha, the person who is the height of the thumb, Angusta Matra Purusha. Sutras 24 to 25 refer directly to this Purusha. This is according to Ramanuja, while Sutras 26 to 30, 31 to 33, and 34 to 38 form 3 sub-adhikaranas or subtopics referring to the qualification of the gods for Brahma Vidya, which forms Devatadi Karanam, the Madhu Vidya forming the Madhvadikaranam, and the disqualification of Sudras styled as the Apashudradikaranam, respectively. So Sutras 39 and 40 state additional reasons for regarding the Angusta Matra Purusha, the thumb-sized Brahman, as the supreme Brahman, meaning the Paramatman, for the passages referring to him before whom everything trembles, Katha Upanishad 262, and to the primordial life, Katha Upanishad 2.5.15, both which cannot be anything but Brahman, occur between the two other passages of the Katha Upanishad 2.4.12 and 2.6.17, mentioning the Angusta Matra Purusha. So Sutra 40 is translated by Ramanuja thus: the Angusta Matra Purusha is Brahman because a light is seen to be mentioned in the intervening passage, which means that he treats Jyotir Darshanat, right, from seeing the light, right, as one compound. Nimbarka follows Ramanuja in regarding all these sutras 24 to 40 as one topic, or Vadanikarna, which he calls Pramitadikarna. Madhva refers Sutra 24 to a passage of Katha Upanishad 5.3 and translates it as thus: Vishnu is meant or understood, Pramita, owing to the direct mention of Vamana, which cannot but mean Vishnu. That's interesting. So there's a direct mention of Vamana here. If we look in Katha Upanishad 5.3, which Madhva has quoted here, it says Madhye Vamana ma sinam Vishvadeva upasate. So he's saying, Madhva is translating the word here, Vamana, to mean Vishnu. So, Vamana avatar. Thus, Madhva understands the word Pramita to mean known, as against others who take it to mean measured. Otherwise, Madhva exactly follows Shankara in the division of the adhikarana. So how does Shankara do it again? He divides it up into 5 adhikaranas, right? Vallabha also follows Shankara generally in the division of the adhikaranas, let's say. So Adhikarana 12, Sutra 41, decides that the ether, which reveals names and forms in Chandogya Upanishad 8:14.1, is neither the elemental ether nor the individual soul, but is the highest or supreme Brahman. The next two sutras, 42 and 43, form, according to Shankara and Vallabha, a separate adhikarana or topic, deciding that the Vijnanamaya, he who consists of knowledge, right, spoken of in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4:3-7, is not the individual soul, but is Brahman, the supreme Brahman. So that's what Shankara and Vallabha say. So Ramanuja and Nimbarka, however, regard these three sutras as forming but one adhikarana dealing with the akasha, right, or the ether in Chandogya Upanishad 8:14.1, to the objection that the jiva or pratyagatman is nothing but the paramatman, owing to many passages teaching their unity and condemning duality, and that therefore the akasha may be the jiva in its release state, its release condition, spoken of in the immediately preceding passage. Sutra 42 replies, no, for the jiva and Brahman are spoken of as being distinctly different from each other, and in the condition of deep sleep, in the departure from the body. And even in the state of release, the jiva can never be non-different from the Supreme Brahman, right? Can never merge into the Supreme Brahman. It is to be noticed that Sutra 42 distinctly speaks of the difference between Brahman and jiva. In the same passage from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4:3-24, it is adduced by both Shankara and Ramanuja as proof. The fact that the word Vyapadeshat has to be implied in Sutra 42 seems to mean to be an argument in favor of taking Sutras 42 and 43 as belonging to one and the same adhikarana. Madhva takes these three sutras, 41, 42, and 43, as forming three different adhikaranas, referring to Akasha or ether in Chandogya Upanishad 8:14.1, to Pragya, right, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4:3-21, and to the Lord of all in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 6:4-22, respectively, and decides that all these are nothing but the highest Brahman. So now we come to the fourth pada. So we dealt with the first, second, and third padas of the first adhyaya, adhyaya. It is shown in 115 that the pradhana cannot be the cause of the world. So we're talking about the pradhana means the conglomerate of material elements, right, being the cause of the world. So there's two causes of the world, right? There's the nimitta karana, upadana karana. So there's the cause of the world is according to most the Vaishnavacharyas, is Ishvara, is the Lord, right? He's the efficient cause, but he's also the material cause. So it was proved in the first adhyaya, the first pada, Sutra 5. In that particular sense, it was proved that the pradhana, or the conglomerate of material elements, is not the cause of the material world, which is what Madhva says. Madhva alone says this, right? So everybody else says that the Supreme Brahman is the cause, not only the efficient cause, but the material cause. So, for it finds no support in the scriptures, and further, it is shown that Brahman alone is the subject of the various doubtful passages of the Upanishads. Right. Still, Sankhya, the Sankhya system, which is the system, which is basically quoted about the creation of material elements, right, from the original conglomerate of elements, pradhana, right, comes forth with certain passages in which occurs terms most familiar to the Sankhya doctrine. The last pada, the first adhyaya, which we're now talking about, the fourth pada, the fourth section of the first chapter, right, especially aimed at showing us that such terms, which seem to be familiar if we've read Sankhya doctrine before as terms used by Sankhya, right, that such terms cannot but denote something connected to the Vedanta doctrine, right? So it's not that we should now see all these terms which may come in the Upanishads as supporting the doctrine of Sankhya, but they actually support the doctrine of Vedanta, and that's the subject matter of the fourth pada of the first chapter. So the first adhikarana of the fourth pada, right, is Sutras 1 to 7, establishes that the word avyakta, the undeveloped, right, occurring in Katha Upanishad 1, 3, 10, and 11, does not denote the pradhana, but the subtle body as well as the gross body viewed as an effect of the subtle body. Shankara, Ramanuja, and Nimbarka all agree exactly. Madhva, who reads an additional sutra between 5 and 6, reading Prakaranat from the Prakarana, right? And who also includes Sutra 8 in his Adhikarana, in his topic, tries to show that the avyakta, unmanifest, right, denotes Vishnu, and he interprets Sutra 4, what are we talking about here? 1 to 7. So Sutra 4, Gyayatva Vachanachcha, differently from the rest. According to all except Madhva, the sutra means that the avyakta, the unmanifest, cannot be pradhana. For if it had been the pradhana, right, because Madhva believes that the cause of the universe is the pradhana, right, and that the conglomerate of material elements from which the different elements evolve is actually material, is material in nature, not the supreme. So for if it had been the pradhana, Nyayatva being the object of knowledge, should have been predicated of it, since according to the Sankhya's, it is the knowledge of the pradhana that leads to moksha. But it is not so predicated. The avyakta can mean only something else. Madhva understands it to mean that the avyakta denotes Vishnu, because gyayatva, or knowledge or knowing, right, can never be mentioned of anything but Vishnu. According to Vallabha, the avyakta in the passage, or unmanifest in the passage in question, denotes the grace of the Lord, the Lord's grace, which is also identical with the Lord himself and with the Brahman that is subtle, right? So that's interesting. So Adhikarana 2, Sutras 8 to 10, shows that the tricolored, unborn, Tri Rupa Aja, Aja means unborn, Tri Rupa means of three forms, in Swatasvatara Upanishad 4.5 cannot be the pradhana or prakriti of the Sankhya's, but it is the Jyoti Rupa Krama, the causal matter of the world, consisting of the three elements, light, water, and earth, instead of the three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, as the Sankhya's would say. Or one of the divine power of Brahman, which creates this causal matter. Or it is the divine power of Brahman that creates this causal matter. That sounds better. And the term aja, goat, right? So aja means unborn, but it can also mean goat in Sanskrit, is only a metaphorical description. A kalpana means, what does the word kalpana mean? Kalpana means a fashioning or a forming or a making or an imagination, right? So I guess aja here if it's taken to mean goat and not unborn, then it's just an analogy, sort of an analogy. Ramanuja and Nimbarka have the same general purport for this adhikarana, but in accordance with their doctrine, the aja, more meaning unborn for them, I'm sure, more particularly means the shukshma, the subtle, chid vastu, the subtle thing, vastu, chid, which is conscious and unconscious, the intelligent and material world in its subtle condition, which forms the very body of Paramatman, which fits in very, very nicely with Ramanuja's philosophy, and obviously Nimbarka too. So Ramanuja and Nimbarka, however, explain the words Jyoti Rupa Krama in Sutra 9 and Kalpana in Sutra 10 to mean produced from Brahman. Right, that's what everybody says, that the world of souls and matter are produced from Brahman, in the sense of Brahman not only being the nimitta or the efficient cause, but also the upadan karana, the material cause, right? And creation respectively, right? So produced from Brahman and creation respectively, right? If it be asked how the Aja, right, unborn, be called produced from Brahman and at the same time unborn, the reply is that it refers to the creation that is in data. So he's quoting from the Rig Veda 10:193, which is he's given a quote here, the Sanskrit, which means the creator created just as before. So he's quoting from the Veda, Rig Veda 10:193, saying the creator created just as before, and he's proving that so when you call the soul as aja, as unborn, right? Then you say the soul is born, is created, then it seems to be contradiction, okay? So that's why he's quoting the Veda to say the soul can be spoken of as being born, even though the soul is unborn. Ramanuja also takes great pains to refute the explanations of the words as given by Shankara. Vallabha generally follows Shankara, though he reads Sutra 9, Jyotihi Upa Kramat 2, the Aja as Jyoti, the unborn as light, the first creation of Brahman, owing to the statement at the commencement of the passage. Madhva, however, who also reads Sutra 9, just in the same way as Vallabha, interprets the Adhikarana to mean that the words denoting karman or karma, that is sacrifices like the Jyotishtoma, the Vedic sacrifice, also denote none but Vishnu, an interpretation which is the natural consequence of the way how he has explained the preceding Adhikarana. So he continues on with that understanding. Adhikarana 3, of the third topic, according to all commentators, decides that the panchajana so 5 times 5 means 25, which is the 25 principles of Sankhya. So all commentators, right, of the Brahma Sutras say that this is not what the Sankhya's say is the 25 principles of the Sankhya's. Remember, this part is proving that there are certain terminology used by the Sankhya's which also denote the Supreme Brahman and therefore are applicable to Vedanta, not just to Sankhya. So in the Pancha Janaha, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4:4-17 is not the 25 principles, 25 elements, right? But of the Sankhya's, but the 5 pranas, prana, pana, vyana, udana, and samana. Right, so Adhikarana 4, sutras 14-15, asserts that there is no contradiction whatsoever in regarding the Supreme Brahman, whose essence is intelligence being the cause of the world. Ramanuja and Nimbarka have the same general purport, but they connect the Adhikarana more directly with the subject matter of the preceding part of this pada, this section. That is the refutation of Sankhya. The cause is sometimes, so we always have to remember that is the context, because this pada, this fourth pada of the first adhyaya, has got to do with refutation of Sankhya. So the cause is sometimes called sat or eternal, whereas asat or temporary or avyakrita says the Sankhya. So it must be the pradana or the willing ikshana it must be that the pradana and the willing ikshana represents metaphorically the being ready to create of the pradana. The being ready to create of the pradana. No, says the Vedanta, even the word asat means Brahman, that which is not eternal, also means Brahman, and it is so called only with regard to the Vyakrita, or the gross world, endowed with name and form, and it does not mean absolute non-existence. Shankara, however, followed by Vallabha, thinking that the refutation of Sankhya is over, connects this adhikarana, this topic, with the general question of samanvaya, right, of the Vedic texts, and decides that although there may be contradiction among the texts regarding the order of creation, there is no such contradiction regarding Brahman being the cause of the world. And so the samanvaya need not be called into question. Madhva, explaining Sutra 14, just in the same way as Shankara and Ramanuja, sees, however, a new adhikarana, a new topic in Sutra 15, which he interprets to mean, thus, even though all words ultimately denote the Paramatman or Vishnu, still they may at the same time denote other objects in the world by being secondarily transferred to them. Okay. Now, the fifth topic, or the Adhikarana 5, Sutras 16 to 18, according to Shankara and Vallabha, prove that, quote, he who is the maker of those persons of whom all this is the work, unquote, mentioned in Koshataki Upanishad 4:19, is neither the vital air nor the individual soul, but the supreme Brahman. Ramanujan and Nimbarka, who agree in the general purport, however, bring it more directly in relation to the refutation of Sankhya's, remember, which is the context of this whole pada, who see in this passage the Purusha. Adhikarana 6, the sixth topic, Sutras 19 to 22, denotes that the self to be seen, to be heard, etc., in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2:4-5, is not the individual soul, but the highest self. In this, also, Ramanuja and Nimbarka see a refutation of the Sankhya's, according to whom the Purusha is spoken of in the passage. The Adhikarana is important. This Adhikarana is important because it raises the question how it is that while the passage, quote, everything is dear for the pleasure of the self, is referred to the jiva. The subsequent passage, by knowledge of the self, everything becomes known, is to be maintained as referring to Brahman. And the three different views are stated under the names Ashmaratya, Odalomi, and Kasa Krishna. These are different commentators like this, and that the last one, Kasa Krishna, is representing the Siddhanta, or the final view on this. However, Sutra 22, however, containing the view of Kasa Krishna, is interpreted differently. According to Shankara, it means because the highest self exists in the condition of the individual self, avashtite, right? Or because the highest self only is that which appears as the individual self, which is evident from such a passage as, let me enter into them with this living self and evolve names and forms. This implies an absolute identity of the jiva and Brahman, right? That's what Shankara says. According to Ramanuja and Nimbarka, however, avastite means on account of, right? Whereas Shankara says it means of the individual soul, right? On account of Brahman's abiding within the individual soul, of account of Brahman, the supreme Brahman's abiding within the individual soul. In other words, permeating and pervading the individual soul. So, because Brahman abides as itself within the individual soul, which thus constitutes Brahman's body. Again, we get back to Sharira Shariri Bhava of Ramanuja. See the quote, he who is dwelling within the self, etc., whose body is the self, etc., from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 3:7-22. Thus, Ramanuja and Nimbarka refer to the antaryamin, the ruler within the soul, implying a real difference of individuality between Brahman and Jiva. Vallabha explains the word avashtiti, right, to mean avashta, and says that the jiva is only an avastha or condition of Bhagavan. And hence, the words denoting the jiva are applied to Brahman, thus referring to his doctrine of pure monism without the help of Maya. So it is difficult to say which of these meanings of the word avashtiti is the most natural. And very probably the advocate of this view, not having in view any definite solution of the problem, used a general word to explain the relation between Brahman, the Supreme Brahman, and the Jiva. So the next topic, Adhikarana 7, Sutras 23 to 27, teaches that Brahman is not only the operative or efficient cause, the nimitta karana of the world, but also the material cause, the upadana karana, prakriti, or otherwise pradana, right, as well. So this is, of course, harping back to this idea that Madhva doesn't agree with this. So here, again, Ramanuja takes this as a special refutation of the Sheshvara Sankhya. Sheshvara Sankhya means Sa Ishvara Sankhya. So there are two types of Sankhya. Sankhya is a school, right? One of the Sad Darshanas, right? So Sankhya is a school, talks about creation of the elements and the creation of the universe. So there's one type of school, which is an atheistic school. It doesn't include God. That is called Nirishvara Sankhya. Here he's talking about Seshvara, Sa Ishvara. So there's a school of Sankhya which teaches that there is a God also, but that the material world was created out of pradana, was created out of the material elements. So here again, Ramanuja takes this as a special refutation of Sa Ishvara Sankhya, according to whom Ishvara is the only operative cause, right? Something that Madhva likes to say that the Supreme is the operative cause, the nimitta karana, but not the upadana karana. So while pradana is an independent material cause, Balava follows Shankara, right? Balava follows Shankara. Hence the word parinamat means from the change, in Sutra 26 is most important, for it is distinctly applied to Vivarta or superimposition doctrine held by Shankara. So there are two doctrines here, right? One is held by Shankara. He's called Vaivartavad. Vaivartavad means that there is only a superimposition of ignorance on Brahman, which shows the appearance of the soul and matter, the universe, right? That the soul and matter have no real existence. They have a phenomenal existence due to this superimposition called adhyasa of ignorance or maya, ajnana, on to Brahman. Right? That is called Vaivartavad. So it means that the world is unreal, right? He's basically sums it up by saying, Jagat Mithya, the world is false. But everybody else says the world is true, the souls are true, and that is called Parinamavad. Parinama means there's a real transformation of Brahman into the souls and the world. So, so here, the word parinamat in Sutra 26 is most important, for it is distinctly applied to the Vaivarta superimposition doctrine held by Shankara. The last Sutra 28 of the Pada is explained by Shankara and Vallabha thus. Both of these are the monists. They're both the monists, Shankara and Vallabha. So Shankara is a monist, but he attributes Maya or ignorance as the cause of the seeing the world and the souls as different from God, as different from the Supreme Brahman. Whereas Vallabha says there's no need for this principle of ajnana is wrong. We can't admit that. We have to accept that everything is Brahman, but without Maya. So thus, the refutation of the Sankhya view can be applied, mutatis mutandis, to the doctrines also, such as the doctrine of the world having originated from atoms, right? Which is like a Sankhya theory. So Ramanuja and Nimbarka, however, translate it thus: all the passages of the Vedanta text are explaining as referring to Brahman and Brahman alone. All the passages of Vedanta text are explained as referring to Brahman, the supreme Brahman, and Brahman alone. These two modes of translating the last sutra are very surprising. Indeed, in view of the fact that Shankara has nothing to do with Sankhya doctrine in the preceding four adhikaranas, right? So why bring it up now? Sutras 14 to 27, while Ramanuja connects them as a rule with the refutation of one or other point in the Sankhya doctrine. Sankhya is no doubt inconsistent with himself. Shankara is inconsistent with himself in not referring about half of this part to the refutation of the Sankhya doctrine, though in introducing the pada, he remarks that this pada is for the special aim, for its special aim, the demonstration of certain words and passages claimed by the Sankhya's as supporting their doctrine can really speaking only refer to certain things connected to the Vedanta doctrine. On the other hand, so it's really strange that Shankara starts out this pada, this section of the first chapter of the last section, the fourth section of the first chapter of the Vedanta Sutra, by saying that this section is going to be about refuting the ideas of the Sankhya's, but then he doesn't take that up, you know. So on the other hand, Ramanuja and Nimbarka following him have uniformly directed the whole pada against the refutation of the Sankhya doctrine. So it's funny because Ramanuja and Nimbarka have taken this idea of Shankara's that came in the beginning of the fourth pada, right, to say that this whole pada is meant to refute Sankhya, right? They've both taken that to heart and they've explained it in that way, but Shankara hasn't explained it that way himself. Madhva, differing from all the rest, sees that this pada, and in this pada, an attempt to show that all words, without exception, ultimately denote Vishnu. That's nice. And from this point of view, he is consistently interpreting all the sutras. Sutras 15 to 22 form one adhikarana and are explained consistently with the Sutra 15 explained above. Thus, the use of words to denote the world by objects as opposed to Vishnu is due to the popular usage, and it has nothing to do with the Shastra. And thus, there is no inconsistency at all, for all words denote ultimately, esoterically, Vishnu, while at the same time they may denote worldly objects exoterically, Sutra 16. So since an object may be denoted by words referring to Vishnu, all objects being dependent on and owing their existence to Vishnu, the jiva and the chief vital air also may be denoted by the words referring to Vishnu, owing to the threefoldness of upasana. See again, chapter 1, pada 1, Sutra 31, Sutra 17 here, right? Above with Sutra 17 of the fourth pada, right? So all the following sutras are explained by him in the same strain. Thus, for instance, the three sutras 20, 21, and 22, given the different views regarding the reasons why words refer to actions in the first instance and to Vishnu ultimately, Kasha Krishna's view being that words denote the worldly objects because everything is in the Paramatman, is supported by and rests in Vishnu, avastitehe. Sutras 23 to 27 form another adhikarana, a different topic, proving that the word prakriti and all other similar words mean Vishnu ultimately. Sutra 28 finishes the topic by asserting that all words like sunya, meaning nothingness, abhava, non-existence, right, may be explained or derived as meaning Vishnu, right? So here, there's a footnote that says Madhva derives the words shunya and abhava so as to mean Vishnu, and he gives the exact explanation of the two words here in Sanskrit. So sunya means he who makes the pleasure of others inferior to his own, and abhava as being he is not capable of being thought of, or hence is called abhava. Right, according to Madhva, thus the whole of this pada serves one purpose, that is, to demonstrate that all words like avyakta, aja, prakriti, and whatnot ultimately refer to Vishnu. Thus, Madhva's interpretation, though standing by itself and rather fanciful in some cases, has the merit of consistency in that it strictly takes its stand on Samanvaya, the title of the first Adhyaya. Right. So that is, we have finished now understanding what we've gone through the first chapter. And so now this is a good place to take a break and we look at the second Adhyaya next time. Questions? You can see how Nimbarka and Ramanuja are together on a lot of things, and how Madhva also joins them on some things and goes his own way on other things. And even Madhva agrees with Shankara on some aspects. There's some aspects, but it's interesting, especially in that last pada, how it was all supposed to be a refutation of Sankhya, and that's what, according to Shankara, and yet Shankara himself didn't use it all as a refutation of Sankhya. He diverged from his own ideas. So it's a very interesting analysis what he's going through. It perhaps needs more depth. We need to go into the actual, if we can look at the actual Upanishadic statements in their context to see more about what they're talking about. So we went through very quickly.
Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo